Jerome, thank you so much for joining me on the Athlete Ready Global podcast, man. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it, and I'm excited to be here with you today.
Absolutely. So tell for the listeners, and I've talked to you before a little bit about who our market is and who really listens to this podcast, and it is personal trainers, strength conditioning coaches, fitness entrepreneurs. So for all of those people, and I know you're a professional in real estate, tell them a little bit about yourself, how you got started in this industry, all those good things.
Sounds good, Jared. Thank you. It's funny. I never really considered myself a real estate person until I got into the space and realized that, since the majority of our companies revolve around the real estate game, people really advocated in regards to the knowledge that we had in real estate. But I've really just been an entrepreneur. I started in business back in 1993, right out of high school. While I was in college. I was a personal trainer, so I was in the fitness stuff. I got a degree in nutrition and dietetics, and
Okay.
I love that space. In fact, how I became an entrepreneur is I answered an ad in the one ads looking to work in a gym over the summer. I was competing in bodybuilding at the time and wrestling in college, and I ended up getting involved in direct sales and network marketing, and it was my first introduction to entrepreneurship. And I rode the roller coaster of entrepreneurship for about 2.5, 3 years, went through my ups and downs, my failures. And when I finally stabilized in business, Jared, one of the things that I knew about real estate and not knowing much at all was that I could own an asset and it would protect my money better than anything else out there. And so I started investing some of the capital that I started making in my business in real estate, so that I didn't have to ride that roller coaster, that up and down deal anymore. And lo and behold, here I sit over 20 plus years later, and one of our biggest holdings now is real estate, and it's been one of the most precious blessings that we've had in regards to stabilizing our financial future and our assets. And now, with all the holdings that we've accumulated over the years, people have come to us and as a real estate professional. And so lo and behold, not even knowing that I was really working in this direction, here I sit 25 years later. So
That's awesome. So that's funny because I had no idea that your background was first in personal training and nutrition. I didn't have no idea about that. That's pretty cool. Where did you get kind of your financial education when it came to real estate investing? Like where did it come from?
it comes from 100% from the School of Hard Knocks. I bought a rental home just like anybody would go out and buy a rental home. And I bought a second home that I ended up living in, and I ran my business out of my home. And my neighbors took me to court and were trying to get me expunged from my own piece of real estate to not run my business out of there. So I knew that the clock was ticking in regards to how long I could run my business there, because I was just burning time going to court, fighting the system in my 20s. And so I started seeking out commercial real estate. Well, when I was in network marketing, Jared, we were working out of what we call training centers. And I found it easier to rent desk space in my offices in order to pay for the lease of that office. And I started making money off the desk holders in my office, more so than I was making off my distributorships. And so I learned the real estate game from renting desk space in network marketing, as opposed to the real game of network marketing at first. And so I used the same concept when I got into business, and I said, I'm not going to pay for a building. I'm not going to pay rent to anybody. I'm going to go find a building that has multiple units. I'm going to fix it up, and I'm going to lease them to other people and let other people pay for my building for me. And so as simple as that might sound, it was that stupid, simple concept that I had in my mind because of my experience through running training centers and direct sales and network marketing, that I said, I'll just apply the same concept. I'll take a small office space. I'll use the utility yard for my trucks and equipment, and I'll lease the rest of it out, and I'll let it pay for itself. And that stupid little concept bought me my first building on a real estate contract, and it worked. I remember my dad going over there with me and goes, well, what happens if you don't lease it out? I looked at him. I go, I never really thought about that, because I'll lease it. My confidence was high enough that I knew I could lease it. I bought the building modest enough, and it was trashed when I bought it, and I knew I could renovate it. And so when I was all in to the property, I was probably $350,000 into the property, paid about $250, I believe, for it, put about $70,000 to $100,000 into it, and the building looked brand new. It leased really fast, and I had success. And from that one building, I started multiplying and duplicating that process. And it got into developing our own properties. It got into developing land. My confidence went up. And so I always tell people getting involved in real estate is really just about having a little bit of success. And it's like that with anything in business. Small wins are big long term because you just don't know what that small win's going to turn into. And it's really just building those baby steps of confidence that really turn into something big and dynamic over the course of time that you may not even expect. Because I didn't expect to be here in real estate right now, Jared. I mean, I would have never guessed that this would have been the path life would have taken me on if you would have asked me 25 years ago.
So for people listening, I mean, what have the benefits been going into real estate for yourself, for your family, the freedom that it's allowed you? What are some of the benefits that you, I mean, obviously are all from the fruits of your labor?
Yeah, yeah, and I am. We built everything off of sweat equity, and
Hmm.
some of the benefits of it have been one, cash flow. You get to a point as an entrepreneur where you, just like anybody in any traditional business, enough's enough. And being an entrepreneur, it's hard. It's a hard way of life. I don't know that any entrepreneur, when they first get into it, really think that there's going to be as many trials and tribulations, ups and downs that they go through. But every one of them that I know have encountered opposition of some sort to some magnitude. And one thing that's great about real estate is even through some of the trials and tribulations that we've went through the recession and individual property challenges that we've had, the wins have out-earned the losses in regards to the stress that's been involved with it. And really, the cash flow from multiple unit real estate is really been the biggest thing because you can see an end to your game, right? And all people always ask, Jerome, when's enough enough? And I said, well, enough's enough is when I decide to just turn it off at this point in time. I know that we have enough real estate, enough cash flow that if I turned it off yesterday, we can live forever, Jared, without any issues financially. And we can live very independently and at an upper level of a social economic class because of what real estate has done for us in regards to cash flow and residual income. And it got us to a point where we don't even manage our largest assets anymore. We have management companies, so really it's hands off, stress free. Although we do still manage some of our smaller properties, we can turn it all off and be fine in regards to our cash flow and never have to work again. And so if people really truly want to retire, it's one of the best ways that you can retire with your hands off and really be able to do what you enjoy in life, although we continue to work.
Absolutely, absolutely. How has the experience been working with property managers? Has it been better than what you thought going in, or giving responsibilities to other people? That scares a lot of people, to be able to delegate those tasks for others. What was the experience like for you?
So that's a great question, Jared, and I'll tell you because it's been a process like everything.
Uh-huh.
So my first experience with property managers was in 2010. We managed everything 100% till 2010. Then we really started getting into the Phoenix area. And in 2010, we decided, okay, I can't be up here all the time. My son was 2 years old. I didn't want to commit to having to manage properties away from where I lived. And I hired a property management company, then another, and they stole. We ran into the same issues a lot of people have: trust issues, them stealing from us in regards to tenant improvement stuff, poaching parts from one air conditioner to another, and we went through all of it. The accounting issues that we had to audit, so there was a learning curve for sure. And what I learned is that small numbers in real estate compromise your ability to have a good property management company. So with that being said, what ended up happening is we landed up hiring the wrong companies because the good companies, the big companies, wouldn't manage small properties. And it was my turning point where I said, okay, I've got to get big enough for the bigger companies to be attractive, for me to be attractive to them. And so at that point in time, it was like a little game changer because we did finally find a small property management company that would handle the day-to-day operations on small properties for us. But we also understood that it was a game changer in regards to getting to a next level where we had enough units where bigger companies wanted to manage for us. So now what happens is once you get big enough, Jared, what lands up happening is companies want to acquire your stuff because they want to work with you because it's an advantage to them. And so when you have enough units, it's hands off, and then they have to play by the same game everybody else does. The small property management companies, they don't, because they're managing small petty properties. So their accounting is different. They don't have all the systems set in place that the CBRE guys have, that the large management companies utilize day in, day out. And so their accounting is not up to par like some of the big guys. And so my advice to people is, one, do your homework. Find the biggest thing that you're looking for is you're looking for a reputable company that's honest, and you want somebody that's personable that you like. Because if you don't have those two things when you're small, you're going to have issues with property management. And in the beginning, it is good for you to manage your own properties because it teaches you a little bit about the construction game. It teaches you a little bit about the accounting and the management game. And so as much as some people don't want to have to manage anything at all, it's important for them to know at least a little bit of it in the early interim time until you hand it off to somebody else. But just make sure that you really, really interview the management companies that you're working with so that you don't go through some of what we went through. You know, we went on a lot of trust.
Good points. I mean, that's kind of the hardest thing in any business is building the team.
It is.
Yeah, especially, you know, even in the gym setting, that's definitely the most difficult part of the entire business is getting the right people in the right place essentially, for sure. So how would you tell someone, you know, if they asked you, how do I get my feet wet in real estate investing? What are some strategies that you would tell them? You know, when people think of, you know, investing in real estate, I don't think they really understand all of the ways that you can develop income streams. So talk to us a little bit about the different ways that you can build a diverse portfolio with it.
Sure. And so people need to educate themselves first. And I say start small and simple. I think people see everybody growing in mass quantities, and it doesn't happen like that overnight unless you have larger holdings. And if you have larger holdings and you want to lose them, you need to partner with somebody you trust that has information and knowledge that you don't have. Because what's scary about people with money but lack of knowledge is that a lot of times they invest in things because they have the capital, but it doesn't mean that they have the knowledge to invest it correctly. So if you have money but no knowledge, take it slow still, even if you have, just like the person with it doesn't have money. In fact, it's almost, Jared, advantageous when people don't have much capital because then they're forced to take it slow. And when you're forced to take it slow, it's good because it'll teach you how to go out and educate yourself slowly. So I always advise people, take small steps first, invest, have small wins, and you're going to run into problems. It's inevitable. And those problems are good when you have small deals because then they're not financially encumberancing to you. You won't lose. But even single family, just one small win is good. I'm a multi-unit guy. I love multi-units. They don't scare me, but even just biting off a small building, retail was always good for us. And retail is dying, Jared, but there'll always be a need for small retail. So if you have a small building in your backyard, there's always going to be a need for a barbershop. There's always going to be a need for a beauty salon. There's always going to be a need for a little juice bar. There's always going to be a need for a little restaurant, eatery, catering places. All of those service-oriented businesses need a place. You know, your small local insurance agent needs a place to house his business, the small little accountant. And so little buildings are good. I still like them. We still own them today. Large retail is bad. Don't get into that. But small unit retail is a good little place to put your money. You know, if you can buy a little 8,000 square foot building for under $300,000, get anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500 a month in rental income with 4 or 5 units, you can make $80,000 a year gross on a property like that. And after you pay everything, all your payments and everything on it, if it's renovated right and you're leasing it right, you can make $40,000 a year in cash flow, even while you're paying your building down, which is great. You know?
So what's the difference of qualifying for like a residential property compared to like a commercial property like you're talking about?
So there's 2 different ways to qualify for commercial property. If you're a small business owner and you yourself own a business, let's say you're a dentist or a small physician, or if you own a plumbing company or a tile company, or if you
or a gym,
a gym, any of that stuff, you got to think different, you know. And a lot of it is mindset, right? So you got to think the way I was thinking back in the 90s when I said, okay, I need to house my business. I need to find a building that works for me, for my business, but I need to find one that not only works for me, but has multiple units in it, even if they're smaller units. And if you house your business in the facility, banks love that. And so it's almost no different if you're an owner occupant and you occupy 50% or better of that property as an owner occupant, you can go in with a 10% down payment. You can mortgage that, and you don't need as much outgoing capital and as much of a down payment as you would with a traditional lending as an investment property. Because as an investment property, the banks will look at it, and minimum, you're going to need 20% down. A lot of times, banks, especially when there's stuff like COVID happening, they'll require 30% down payment on a property to secure the asset because they're scared as well. And so that takes a lot more upfront capital, which most entrepreneurs, most individuals, they just don't have. And so what I say to them is there's always a deal out there that can be owner financed. And so I love distressed real estate, Jared. It was the way I made myself in real estate. I would go in and look for deals that were distressed because typically they were managed poorly or somebody owned them outright, and you could do an owner finance deal on them. And I love owner finance deals because you can go in and negotiate your terms.
Explain what an owner finances deal is for people listening.
Sure. So an owner finance deal is somebody who owns a property that'll do the financing for you in-house. So you don't have to go to a bank, an institution. You don't have to go to a hard money lender. You don't have to go to a third-party financial institution for lending. It's when somebody who actually owns the property will finance that property on your behalf. And so they become the bank. And so what you do is you go through the same type of closing that you would with any traditional property through an attorney or an escrow company. And then you set it up with an escrow company, and you pay the escrow company the mortgage payments so that way the property is secured as an asset. And that way they can't renegotiate halfway through the deal and decide not to sell it to you. You're protected legally, but they become the bank. You pay the escrow company pays them, and then you put terms in place, where you say, okay, they'll finance it for 5 years based on a 30-year amortization schedule or a 20-year amortization schedule, and then they do a 5-year call. And I like those because what that does is it motivates me to get the building stabilized financially. So if I buy it on an owner finance deal, they don't have to check my credit. One, I can go in and I can negotiate the terms. So if I need to go in with a smaller down payment, the property needs to be cash producing, a bank typically won't finance it for you anyways. So if they owner finance it for you and the property has no income yet, you can go in, get your business established there. You can go in, remodel the tenants' units, get them occupied and leased. And then 2 years down the road, when you can show 2 years of rental income, your business is stabilized there. You can go to a traditional financial institution and refinance with a better mortgage rate. And then you probably have more equity in the property as well. So maybe you went in with a 5% down payment when you initially bought it, dumped a little money that you would have normally dumped into a down payment on the property, you dumped into renovations. 2 years down the road, now you have income. Now the property that you once purchased for $250,000 or $300,000 is now worth $500,000. You go to the bank says, okay, we're going to give you a loan based on 75% loan to value. Here's what the appraisal is. And now, because it appraised at $500,000, you have no money out of pocket additional except for closing fees, and sometimes they'll even roll that into the note. You get a better interest payment, and now the property's stabilized, and now you just service it at a 5% mortgage, 4.5% mortgage. You bring your mortgage down, payments down, because typically owner financing interest rates are typically a little higher, maybe 6%, 7%, even 8% is not abnormal for owner financing. But it allows you to go in, purchase the property for a more inexpensive price, allows you time to stabilize it, and allows you to be able to go and lease it, and then you can refinance it down the road without any type of liabilities or any type of early payoff penalties. Mm-hmm. And you can go in and you have an asset now that's cash producing, and that's how I started.
Awesome.
So I know that's a lot to bite off.
Oh, that's great.
Rewatch it, and at least it introduces them to the process mentally.
Absolutely. So, you being self-employed and you started again in the fitness industry, what kind of problems and struggles do you see, younger entrepreneurs when trying to purchase a home or trying to qualify for a house? And then what are kind of some of the solutions that you would help them with, whether it's, being very creative on their taxes or obviously keeping a higher credit report, all those kind of things. So what are some solutions to those problems that you see and, when you talk to these entrepreneurs?
So most entrepreneurs want to go into real estate full time. I'll tell you that I never considered myself a full time real estate guy. I've always had a business supporting my real estate. It's real important, that people, if they have a job, and even if they hate the job that they're doing, if they have cash flow from it, stay at your job. That's one of the first things. If you're an entrepreneur and you're doing something different than real estate, whether it's flipping homes, and that's maybe your full-time business, or wholesaling, and maybe that's your full-time business, stay there for a little bit, because I'll tell you that there is a roller coaster to ride in real estate, as we all know. We're going to see it now in the commercial sector. It's going to get hit hard with COVID. There's going to be a lot of empty buildings out there that are available, but where there's empty real estate brings opportunity to new investors, to find ways to stabilize it, get it very inexpensive. So keeping your credit good is super important because, Jared, there's going to be times where people come into deals, they have to get less than desirable terms to get into the deal, and they're going to want to refinance. If you compromise your credit, you don't have the ability to do that. One mistake I see a lot of entrepreneurs doing is that they go in and they don't file enough taxes. They don't pay themselves enough income because they're running their business. They think it's advantageous to write everything off. They don't have enough cash flow, and it's good on the initial time in theory, right? You don't have to pay taxes, but it's bad in your ability to grow, and it's the biggest mistake most entrepreneurs make is they keep their cash flow too low. And so, look, I've always said, if you're not making six figures and you're not paying yourself six figures as an entrepreneur, you're screwing yourself. You're putting yourself in a very compromising position because it's limiting your ability to grow financially. The banks don't want to look at you. You scare the banks, the financial institutions, and you don't show enough cash flow to allow your books to grow. So my theory is pay your taxes, write off everything you can, but pay your taxes in a fair market value where you show a legitimate income. And go out and grow as a business, because if you're making a shitload of money and you're paying a shitload of taxes, who friggin' cares? Just make a lot of money, pay a lot of taxes, and continue to grow, keep making more money, paying more taxes, and as you grow, it's gonna build. And you'll have plenty of write-offs. Believe you me, you're gonna be looking for stuff to write off at that point in time. But when you're first starting out, pay yourself an income, keep your credit good. And even if your credit's bad, fix it. There's ways to fix it. I got contacts. I got a good friend named Brandon Elliott. That's all he does. He spoke at some of my conferences. And I got some other friends. That's what they do full time. And they'll help you clean up your credit to allow you to go out and build your portfolio if that's what you need to do. But always keep it clean. Always do things right. File your taxes. Pay your taxes so you can grow and build.
Absolutely. I learned that lesson the hard way. So, being an entrepreneur, I try to write off every single possible thing that I can. And yeah, at the end of the year, my taxes are really low, but at the same time, there's no banks that are just going to be able to, want to lend me money because I show that I make $15,000 a year, when of course they're not going to be, want to lend that to me, lend for buying a house. And that's screwed me over. I don't know how many times, and I finally learned my lesson with that for sure.
Yep. Yeah. And so for those people that are going through that now, just listen through our experience, because
yes,
it's advantageous. Just pay your taxes, get it done, and make it happen.
For sure. Talking about like debt to income ratio, what is the optimal debt to income ratio when someone is purchasing a house? What should they be looking
banks
for?
want a 50% debt to income ratio.
Okay.
I always tell people being liquid is king. Being cash isn't king. Being liquid is king. I know that we've hindered our ability to growing to an exponential level early years, especially after the recession, because we paid a lot of properties off. But I'll tell you, like even coming into COVID, there was times that I sat back and said, okay, should I have used that capital to buy more real estate? And then when COVID hit, I sat back and scratched my head and said, shit, all my stuff's paid off. We have no debt, no personal debt. The business debt that we have is minimal. We've always went in with a great debt to income ratio on all our properties. So even some of the apartments that we owned, we had like 40% equity in them already. And so the cash flowed. So even if we lost 10% of our tenants, who cares? They cash flow, right? So, I always say, if you can live, my wife and I did this when we were in our 20s, our late 20s. I told her, I've went through so much ups and downs. I don't want to ever be in a position where I have to figure out a way to live. I knew that if I went through ups and downs in business and I had to go get a job, I wanted to create a lifestyle where I could live on $4,000 a month, right? And what I meant by that is not $4,000 a month, including travel and all the fun stuff, just house payment, car payment, and the necessities. And so I lived in the same 2,600 square foot house for 18 years. You know, we bought it. I renovated the whole thing. I made it my home. We had an acre of land. It was a 4-bedroom house, and I'll tell you that it was a good place to be because we never over leveraged ourselves. We never got into expensive car payments. When we got into car, we always bought our cars cash. And so we always stayed modest on stuff. And when you're in real estate, that's important. We never carried a lot of personal debt. Our debt was always business debt. Now, we did over leverage ourselves pre-recession on commercial properties and when we were developing, and we got stuck in a lot of that stuff when the recession hit. And so at that time is when we said, okay, it's time to pay some of this stuff down. It's time to stop taking that big of a risk where we only had 10% loan to value on properties. Let's go 30% loan to value, or at least 25% loan to value, and just really stabilize our income.
Awesome. And so I know you made a video about this the other day, and I thought it was super interesting, is the differences between good debt and bad debt. To most people, obviously, debt is just this, has this negative connotation, and of course, you're owing money. But what are the differences between good and bad debt?
So tomorrow I'm signing a lot of good debt. We close on 2 warehouse properties tomorrow. Probably a couple million. I think we're financing about $2 million between 2 different properties. One's a real small warehouse that we bought for $250,000, 8,000 square feet down the street from this bigger one. That's why we bought the smaller one. We typically don't acquire small stuff like that as much anymore. But because we just acquired a 38,000 square foot freezer warehouse building right down the road, we ended up buying both. And I'll tell you that bad debt is debt that you acquire when you're buying things that you want, not things that you need, like a big car, a fancy car, a big house. Stupid debt, it's bad debt, so it goes back to exactly what I was just talking about. I've always kept our personal debt low. What I mean by personal debt is the stuff that you buy that you feel you want to show off with to other people, that you feel you need because you want it, but you don't necessarily need it to make money. Like my mom always told me, Jared, people ooh and ah for 5 seconds and then they go off to their own problems. So if you're buying stuff to compete with the Joneses, it's bad debt. Cars are the worst investment you can buy. They're just bad debt. That stuff, let your cash flow later buy you nice cars and stuff like that. Build your base first. Don't go out and mortgage yourself to the hill, and it hinders, and then allowing it to hinder your ability to grow in real estate. Go in and get good debt. Good debt being the real estate that's income producing. And that's why I'm an advocate for multi-unit real estate, because anytime I have multi-unit real estate, I know that the real estate will pay for itself. And so any debt that has cash flow is good debt. And so when you go in and you purchase something that has tenants in it that produces cash for you day in, day out, because every month that passes, you get checks at the beginning of that month and it cash flows for you, that's good debt. So if I sign a contract for a $2 million loan, but I'm going to make that $2 million back over the course of the next 2 years, 3 years, and it's going to pay for me. It's going to pay for my asset for me on my behalf, and it's good debt. I'll tell you a quick story. I had a friend come to me one time about 12 years ago. He said, Frito-Lay is looking for a facility in Santa Fe. Will you help me find a place that they will lease? And I said, why don't they just buy something? And they go, doesn't fit their business model. So then 24 hours goes by. I call him back up and I said, Ray, look, if I purchased a building myself and leased it to them, would they do a seamless lease for me for 10 years? And we just make it seamless. And he said, yeah, they probably would. So instead of going out and finding them a building to lease, I went in and found a building that I could buy, that I could lease to them. And I did everything simultaneously the same day on closing. We signed the lease. I closed on the building. I bought a building from Swanson Foods. It was a freezer building. We had a company out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin come down, dismantle all the freezers. We did a 10-year lease. I did a 10-year mortgage. I landed up having to pay property taxes on the building, but over the course of 10 years, they paid the property off for me, and I landed up paying about $3,500 a year in property taxes. 10 years later, the building was free here. And then another 10-year lease just got facilitated, and it's all cash flow, income producing real estate, and I still own the asset. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's good debt. That is good debt. That's smart debt. That's good debt.
Man, awesome, man. So thankful for your time, man. That was great. So for people who are kind of interested in, connecting with you, if they have any more questions for you, how can they get a hold of you?
You can follow us on Facebook, Jerome Maldonado. All my photos are the same. You go to Instagram, it's Jerome Maldonado and the number 1. You can hit us up on Messenger, DM us. We're easy to get a hold of on LinkedIn, so any of the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and just look for Jerome Maldonado, and you'll know it's me, because at the end of every session, I always talk about how you go out, and when you implement the teachings that we've lived for the last 25 years, you'll go out and you can compound your success, and you'll always find that on any of our social media platforms.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time, man. I'll be connecting with you soon, for sure.
Jared, thank you. Appreciate you taking the time and having me on your podcast, and anything that we can do for you, your viewers, or anybody else, you let us know, and we're here for you.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you, dude. We'll be in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jerome. All right.
Bye-bye.